Hello, and welcome to Your Game May Vary, a podcast about pen and paper RPGs and whatever else. As we have been transported to the Halloween dimension, we're going to be talking about Delta Green, a game of Lovecraftian horror set during the War on Terror. My name is Vux, and my pronouns are she, they. Joining me are...
Hi,
Introduce
I'm
others.
Marlon. Hi, I'm Marlon, and my pronouns are he and him.
Hey, I'm a salty rat, and my pronouns are he and him.
Hi, I'm Madrona, and my pronouns are she and her, and maybe worm if you want.
Oh, worm.
Worm.
Worm!
Worm.
Worm.
Worm!
Worm. Anyway,
Worm.
we're listening. We're talking about Delta Green. How many of you have actually read the Delta Green book?
I've read it like twice.
I did briefly.
Marlon did. I believe Marlon.
Thank you for not believing me.
I did skim a lot of it because a lot of it is just kind of describing different federal agencies like ICE and the
this
FBI.
is true.
But that is where a lot of the lore comes in, actually. I think you've made a mistake.
Well,
I know I made a mistake because I skimmed a lot of federal agencies because my mind melted.
I'm good at speed reading.
Alright, everyone who skimmed the agencies has made a bit of a mistake, because the thing is, a lot of the, more subtle bits of lore are contained within that. There's a lot more lore in the GM book, but in the interests of not making this episode 4 hours long, I actually did not give you the GM book to read.
Oh, that's good. So this episode is only going to be like 1.5 hours long.
Something like that. I should actually set a timer on my,
Maybe 3 hours.
Cellular phone.
I'll end up cutting. It'll probably be shorter because I'll be cutting out stuff.
Yeah,
We'll be cutting out the jizz.
I'll be cutting out everyone's else except me, and this will be a one-person podcast.
You
don't have to cut everybody else because we all get recorded separately, so you can just not include our audio tracks.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, you could just delete me forever.
He deep fakes everyone else's voices just sound exactly like him.
Everyone else's voice is just
Just
me manipulating the audio.
Just sentence mix all of us to be like, I fucked my sister.
I don't know. When I first using Audacity for episode 1 for the first time, instead of clipping out dead air and stuff, instead of deleting out the dead air, I was clipping it. I ended up filling my clipboard with 15 gigabytes of just dead air and sound files. And my computer was like, "You've just run out of space. You can't do anything." And I'm like, "What?"
Oh no!
What were you do? What do you mean clipping? Like what
Control
happened?
C.
I control V. No, I control.
X?
Yeah, it wasn't copied. I cut it out, and it was saved to
Oh.
the clipboard.
Oh no! I think the delete key just deletes the dead
Yeah.
air.
Yeah, I found that out after my computer was like, "Hi, I'm out of space. You can't save this project. You can't do anything." And I'm like,
God, please end me. I don't know anything other than pain.
Okay, so we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, so we should probably get to it, right?
Jump on it. Let's
Yeah,
go.
that's-
So first off, we have the mechanics, right?
Mhm.
Delta Green is a basic role-playing system, or BRP, right? That's
Mhm.
That's not meaning it's. That doesn't mean it's a basic role-playing system. That's the name of the system.
That's the name of the system. It's
Okay.
it's a system made for Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest, and Delta Green, and several other games. It's a
Including-
generic, sort of system agnostic, or setting agnostic rather, system for
Okay.
D100, D%. You have a skill and you roll under it.
It's pretty simple. You got a 50, you got to roll 50 or less to do things with it. It's pretty acceptable.
It sounded a little confusing. I haven't used this system before, but just reading the instructions, it sounded more confusing than it probably is. It's probably really intuitive when you actually do it.
I could even explain this more easy than you can imagine.
It really requires you to sit and process it for a minute. It's not as instinctive as D&D.
See, I think it's more so because you literally see your percentage of success on the page, and you roll with your percentage of success.
Yeah, that's what kind of threw me off a little bit, because I'm looking at these percentages and like percentage chance to win, and I'm kind of getting flashbacks to Xenonauts or XCOM.
It's actually pretty similar. If you
Yeah.
ever played Morrowind, Morrowind is actually a BRP game.
Oh, I have not played that one yet.
That's a video.
Morrowind is a big pain in the ass because it doesn't have a lot of like physical feedback, and everything, including stuff that you'd think wouldn't be, is all left up to like dice rolls.
Yep. It's a fun game. I think it's excellent. It's
excellent story. Lots of good books
story
to read. Lots of cool characters to interact with. But like the actual like gameplay, very dated.
Yeah, translating a pen and paper RPG directly into a first-person game is a little awkward. Had it been like a top-down game, I think it would have felt a bit better.
Mm-hmm.
As for like the stats, right?
Yeah.
Most of your skills are kind of low. Like even an expert in a field gets about a 70% chance of like success on like something they're specialized in. However, like rolling the dice isn't for like, you know, I want to examine the thing. Rolling the dice is for like situations where it'd be like there's like a high level of like randomness or like some sort of stakes, you know? Like, oh, I need to get this done before the world explodes or something, right? You roll the dice then, right?
Yes,
You
of course.
don't roll the dice to look up, to look up your email and your browser and
Yeah, exactly.
start up your car.
So that is honestly the least realistic part of that one. Because I go and look at my email and god damn it, I'm back using Hotmail again. I don't use that.
I failed my test to look at my email, and now I'm on fucking Google, and I've searched email Google, show email.
Oh no, I failed the roll, and I just Googled Google.com.
Yeah.
Oh no, now I'm on hotrussianbrides.com. How did this happen?
How did that happen?
Yeah, it seems like it's a lot more forgiving in just letting you do mundane things that don't really require luck, and rolling is really when you want a risk of really nasty consequences.
Mm-hmm. The stats are strength, constitution, dexterity, intelligence, power, and charisma. All of them are self-explanatory except for power, which is like a holdover from RuneQuest. Power is basically the big dick energy stat.
It's your force of will and like your internal spirit and
your willpower and your ability to cast magical spells.
Yep.
Doesn't it also cover how you can protect yourself against sanity loss, which I think should be a stat in itself?
Yes.
It does.
A tribute.
Well, sanity is like a function of like your power and intelligence or something like that. Like sanity is a derived stat, taking two of your other stats.
Sanity is times 5 power, actually, in this particular iteration.
Oh, okay. There you go. Madrona knows better because she probably has the book open.
I actually don't, but I read that specifically.
Oh, okay.
I should get the book open.
That, yeah.
Oh no, I have it open. Never mind.
You know, characters are usually part of some sort of like federal agency.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the default sort of character, but you can play anything from a contractor to like a Navy SEAL,
or like an actor, or just a street gangster, or like a janitor.
You can play anything. It's just like the default character type is like a federal agent of some kind.
This booklet actually feels like all of the descriptions of the list of very exhaustive federal agencies is like something that they give someone joining these agencies. It's very in depth about like every branch of the federal government and how they relate to other branches.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like describing the FBI as you would to a new FBI recruit or someone like researching it. Like this is probably good for like actual education on how these different agencies work. It's very in depth about it.
That is lore. So yeah.
It's important because it's not only is it lore for the setting, but also like it puts you in the mind space of like being like one of these agents.
Yep.
I also like that the what time what era your game is set in is totally up to the players. Like you can play an FBI agent in the 50s or up to 2016, but I feel like the subtle undertones and the I don't know if it would be deconstruction or like criticisms, they fit a lot better if you play a more modern campaign because that's where the what you mentioned earlier, I think before we were recording, the criticisms of like these agencies from the war on terror angle.
Well, a lot of the
Yeah,
agencies are coming about in the War on Terror.
yeah, a lot of these agencies didn't exist prior to the War on Terror. Is the issue, and like that's kind of why the implied setting is like between 2003 and like 2016, basically. Because that's the time period in which like most of these agencies have existed and have been like strong.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of younger people may not realize that basically they used to be the FBI and the CIA.
And that was it.
That was
the
it.
NSA also existed. But the NSA's job was basically like to house the data farms for the other people.
Yeah, and I guess the DEA existed, but they were mostly like customs agents.
No. Customs was a different thing. It was part of the Treasury.
Oh, you're right. Treasury was customs. DEA was. They were like a really small department.
Yeah, customs enforcement used to be done by a bunch of like accountants wearing wiry glasses that would just like run around with clipboards and like open up wooden crates and look at all of the contraband alcohol in it. And be like, oh, okay, this is fine.
I actually have notes on this this is more of like a lore thing, but I guess we could talk about it now if you want. But basically, like after 9/11, basically every branch of the government was like militarized. Like customs enforcement used to be a bunch of accountants who were like auditing like shipments coming through the borders and ports. But like after 9/11, customs enforcement was like rolled into like also immigrations, and they were all given guns. And all the armed guys that are in like all the people who weren't armed and who aren't expected to be armed, like regular like agents, are either like the same people as were running it before, or like new people who were brought in and trained to just be like regular like office workers. But like critically, like they added in a whole bunch of like armed segments of these agencies, and they basically filled them with people who came out of like Blackwater. And the worst part about them is that they simply do not have any oversight at all.
Oh yeah,
and they also have a poorly defined mission and no oversight. So it's like, all right, so like our mission is a very nebulous, keep the borders secure, and we all have all these guns and helicopters, and nobody is telling us how we're supposed to do that. So they're basically playing like an Ubisoft like open world sandbox game where they go around securing camps and stuff.
Oh yeah, and like they are so diverse. I can't remember the exact instances off the top of my head, but they're pretty easy to look up. There have been numerous cases in which letters agencies have just been going into long multi-year sting operations against other letters agencies without knowing they were doing this, in just kind of an eternal war for no apparent reason.
That was before 2003. That's been happening the entire time.
Oh no, I know, but it exemplified to massive levels because
we're talking about things that resulted from 9/11.
Yes.
But anyway, we've veered off on a tangent already, and we're not even halfway through the mechanics.
We haven't even started.
Anyway,
you roll the dice, you hit the monster.
Well, a major thing about the system is that like combat is not something you want to engage in. Health levels are very, very low, and weapons do a lot of damage.
Some weapons literally kill outright.
Yes.
Like grenades.
Yeah.
And with submachine guns.
Anything that has automatic fire, they don't bother saying like, oh well, it's XD6 multiple times. No, it's you die. You roll a D100, and if you roll below 10%, you just die. The target dies outright.
Roll your D's.
And if you roll over 10%, you add up the numbers on the dice
Yes, yeah.
on both d10s, and you deal that in damage, which is usually enough to also kill them.
Yeah, human beings are very squishy in this game, and a lot of the weapons are kind of one-shot kills, but it has both pros and cons because you can easily like mow down a room full of cultists, but that mechanically impacts your sanity, so it's actually not good to mow things down like it's D&D.
It's not actually good to just go around killing people. Like, it's really bad for like your sanity, like your mental health, to just go around killing people. It's almost like being put in this position is already a pretty horrific thing, right?
Yeah, like in the mechanics, it talks about how after an encounter, or maybe it's after the whole mission, you kind of add up all of the people that you've killed, and then you take X and Y amount of damage to your sanity. And then if your sanity drops too low, you get a disability, like temporary insanity or PTSD. And it's just kind of really bleak in how like everything you do just slowly erodes you psychologically and emotionally, and there are even like bonds that your character has, like to a wife or to a son, and the game even tracks how all of this stuff is damaging your relationship with them too. And it's just like you're mechanically tracking your character's downward spiral into depression and like getting all these disorders.
It's honestly the most fascinating part of the game.
The bond system is very important generally too. It's you have a lot of social relationships, whether within your team or outside of it. And social relationships are kind of the thing that keeps you sane.
Mhm.
You know, they're the thing you can call upon to try to maintain your ability to remain sane. But generally, using social relationships abuses social relationships in some way because you're leeching happiness off people.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps worst of all, almost everything you can do to make your life better also erodes relationships.
Yeah. In Delta Green, there is no like win condition. Once you enter Delta Green, you only have a 9mm retirement plan.
Mm-hmm.
The best you can hope for is leave behind a large amount of money for your soon-to-be ex-wife, if you can manage that.
If you dare.
I like how the pursuit rules work, because in any other game it would be such a fucking nightmare to track all this like movement and all these checks and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the difference in movement and stats between vehicles would be horrible. But in this, it's literally just like, you know, the driver of each vehicle, or like whoever's chasing who, they make like opposing skill checks related to however they want to try to escape. You know, if there are other people involved in the chase, like if it's a car chase, someone can lean out of the passenger window and shoot at the other car. It's very lightweight. It's very hard to avoid becoming a simulationist nightmare with this sort of game, but I think this manages it pretty well.
It absolutely does, I think. Honestly, I think the pursuit rules they're adapted from something that came before it, and I can't remember exactly which.
I think it's part of Call of Cthulhu. It feels like it would be part of Call of Cthulhu.
They may be. I know they're in one of the later RuneQuests as like racing rules as well as like chase rules, but I don't think they originate there.
Delta Green, I should say, is like it originally started as a supplement for Call of Cthulhu. It was not originally its own system. Now it is.
Yeah, it has varied away from it pretty far.
Yeah, this game came out relatively recently in 2016, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yup. A great year for dark conspiracies. And
I desperately wanted to back this game when it was on, I believe it was on Kickstarter, but I never had the money to do it.
It's also a pretty appropriate game for these days. It's easy to get into that mindset.
It's way easier now to get into the conspiracy mindset than it was in 2016, let me tell you.
Oh yeah, no.
We're going to talk about brainworms? I'm very excited about talking about brainworms.
I mean,
I kind of wanted to push back on that a little bit.
Okay, shoot.
Well, you in the mechanics, you can be a rather corrupted agent, and you're like stealing money from the agency, but it's in the mechanics that if you start doing all this corrupt stuff, it automatically triggers what's called an official review. And at that point, you can actually be fired from, like, say you're an ICE agent, and in the mechanics, you're actually cash strapped. So if you try to requisition official funds and it's like a major expense, it automatically triggers an official review, and you have to like justify that expense, or you get arrested or fired. So it actually feels like the Delta Green is the corrupt agency, but all of these other agencies have these strong like checks and balances to them, and like
Well, Delta Green is, strictly speaking, its existence is corruption, but like the individual agencies, like the things that they do are also horrible. You know, I didn't want to get too deep into this lore stuff because it cuts into what we can talk about later, but basically, like, the most like advantageous position to be in Delta Green is an ICE agent, because they have an excuse to be literally anywhere in the United States, and they have very little oversight and no like they have a strong justification for being anywhere and basically getting anything.
Yeah, like ICE especially is that way because a lot of other agencies, they have specific missions, they have specific oversights. ICE
Like
basically has budgetary concerns and nobody respects them. So nobody actually pays attention to them, and all of your coworkers are depressed and will ignore shit that happens.
Not to mention, although like ICE, the problem with ICE is that all the other agencies kind of see ICE as like a bunch of like idiot thugs with no like brain, which is true.
I was about to
Correct.
say, that has to
in
be
the
true.
game. In the game.
In the game, it is true in the game. I'm sorry, not in real life, obviously.
obviously not.
We love our cops here. Anyway, ICE are dumbasses, and nobody respects them in the government. So, like, getting cooperation from other agencies and being taken seriously by other agencies is something that you're going to have a lot of trouble with.
Yeah, I actually got a little bit of a vibe that within the lore here, ICE are actually like underdogs because they got cash strap budget and no one likes them, and their only major boon is that they can kind of be anywhere that they want and have an authority to like arrest whoever, but they're gonna have a real hard time of it. Like I kind of got those vibes that ICE are the underdogs here.
I don't know. I kind of get it. Maybe it's just that I'm kind of poisoned by like the real life political situation right now. But it kind of seems like the fact that ICE has very little oversight and they can be wherever they want, arrest whoever they want, is like the biggest boon you can hope for. It's like the physical, the physical like resources are not as important as like the authority. Like you can do more as a legitimate ICE agent before you have to start like masking up and doing illegal stuff.
That's true. That's true. That is a fairly like on the pros and cons list. That's probably in bolded, bright green letters compared to all of the cons.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at a lot of the departments there, I mean, like the diplomat, I forget what exactly the department is called, but basically the diplomatic corps, like
you can do basically nothing.
You can do basically nothing, even if you have obscene amounts of resources. If you have the ability to do something,
you do have obscene amounts of resources. If you really twisted arms and like made a big stink about it, you could get a tank or a jet. But then, like, immediately someone is gonna be like, "All right, what the fuck?" And then you're gonna be like in jail, like immediately. Like you'll just teleport into jail. You'll get Thanos snapped and reappear in jail.
Yeah, ICE has the advantage that if you go ahead and kidnap an FBI agent and, break his legs and throw him in jail and disappear him for 3 months. Oh, I thought he was Mexican. My gosh. He shouldn't have spoken Spanish.
I like that the game also specifically rules out the fact that you can't launch a missile strike on US soil.
Yeah.
And the game's like, everyone's going to think that's a little sus if you try to call it in the US, but it's fine if you do it in another country.
It is actually fine if you do it in another country, but you can play any member of any armed forces in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of reasons to do it. Like, there's plenty of mythos-related shit happening in Iraq during the time of the Iraq War, because from their perspective, it's the fucking apocalypse. Like, the evil empire is showing up to kick the doors in. So, like, they're gonna be desperate. They're working on all kinds of shit that they could try to get the Americans to leave with, right?
Oh, is this in the GM book, the one that you
That
did?
tribe in
us?
the hills do actually have tails and magic
Yes.
powers.
Yes, it is. There is stuff in the GM book about that. I believe there are also adventures about that, although they might not be official. But yeah, that's the kind of like shit you could get up to. That's kind of why they have like tanks and aircraft statted, even though like the game isn't really that kind of scale. You could be off doing a mission somewhere in some other country, or maybe even Antarctica. Who knows? You could be on.
I'm always up for Antarctica spookiness.
You could be doing exercises somewhere in the United States when something happens that is not good.
So with like all those with all of these characters and the like, what is the actual combat mechanics like when you're playing all these characters? Like I'm a spec op and I've got my street thug and my actor and my diplomat with me and we're chasing down cultists. Like what does that look like?
Like in an abstract sense, like or like a story sense, or like a strictly mechanical sense.
Like a mechanical sense.
Basically combat is like, why don't I scroll down to it so that I don't talk shit, because I didn't actually do much combat when I ran this.
Yeah, we really didn't. It was a comfy little. I think I shot one gun once.
I don't really like combat. I don't really like combat because like I prefer like slower investigative type of games. But
I'm with you there.
Sorry, Madrona, go ahead.
Yeah, I know the combat in this. Unfortunately, I'm going to get it mentally confused with almost every other D100 RPG because they all share
that's
a
why
lot.
That's why I'm scrolling down to it, because I know that if I start talking about it, it's just going to turn into Eclipse phase in my head.
Yeah, it's going to turn to a phase, a bit of Dark Heresy, a lot of quest. I'm going to do my Impale check for 2d6 damage.
Alright, so basically, the way combat works, right? Everybody notes down their dexterity. The highest dexterity character goes first, and the lowest dexterity character goes last. Characters with equal dexterities act at the exact same time. Basically, you go down the list, and you can move, attack, grapple, punch, do various types of skill checks, whatever, and then you do your thing, and then it moves on to the next person. As far as like in an abstract sense, like all these different like character types interacting, the spec op is going to be the only one relevant in combat, unfortunately, because the other ones, they are warm bodies. They can absorb hits, and they can like if you put like a gun in their hands and they start shooting at the enemies, they could have a good effect because guns are just very dangerous in general. But like in a general sense, you're not really gonna you're not gonna be like shooting guns out of people's hands unless you're like a spec ops person.
Oh yeah, for context, I played a freaking like Department of Parks and Services agent.
Yeah, you were a park ranger, weren't you?
Yeah, I was the park ranger, and gun skills were not as bad as they could have been.
Oh yeah, because
you were a Boy Scout fighting Cthulhu.
Yeah. Well, in this case, when I ran mine, it was about
But I
Nazis.
wasn't actually a commando.
It was about hunting Nazis.
Did you get a Boy Scout badge for killing a cultist?
God, I hope so.
Madrona got into a car crash, twisted her arm, and spent half the adventure in the hospital.
Oh, that reminds me. That's a thing in Call of Cthulhu
else.
too, isn't it?
Sorry, you talked over each other.
Go ahead, Madrona.
I did still do more investigation with that broken arm, getting out of the hospital, waddling around offices.
You did.
Oh, so even when you're recuperating, you can do all sorts of like investigation stuff and still like be involved in the adventure?
Yes, yeah. If you get hurt, then it's like you're gonna have trouble like doing physical tasks, but like obviously it doesn't stop you from working. It can result in stuff like exhaustion and stuff, which is a rule. Basically, if you start like sacrificing sleep for work, then you're gonna start taking penalties for it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I know that getting hurt and losing sleep, you get like negative 10% to any of your chance rolls. So that's really interesting. It just kind of reinforces how like messed up all of this investigations and how working in Delta Green just constantly erodes you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very bleak, but I think it has an advantage there over Call of Cthulhu because I remember that was a criticisms that others levied about Call of Cthulhu is that if you got hurt, you'd get shot like once and then you'd spend 3 weeks in the hospital bed.
I think that the bleakness, like in retrospect, especially, definitely like I think the atmosphere fits perfectly with the time period. You know,
Absolutely, because yeah, 2001 to like 2016, very bleak era in general,
very
and
very bad vibes.
and this game captures it pretty well in a way that I don't know if we're gonna get a lot of jokes out of this episode. I don't know if we're gonna be barreling out the laughs for all of our listeners.
Yeah, I don't.
A lot of those five
There's
words think.
there's a reason we're starting with this in Halloween, for Halloween month. I think that Halloween month should start on a dark note and end on a light note. I think we should start like getting like dipping our toes into the real gritty horror, and then like at the end we have a fun costume party.
Ooh.
Yeah, a lot of the bleakness is
especially
even multiplied
considering
for the setting.
especially considering that in November our futures are decided. I think we should go off on a happy note on Halloween night.
I like to think that any day with Halloween is a very Halloweeny night.
I celebrate Halloween every single day in October.
Same.
Every day since August, I've been painstakingly growing pumpkins.
It's like Christmas where we just push the celebration earlier and earlier into the year until Halloween is just celebrated every single day.
Thank God. I love Halloween.
I look forward I look forward to the day when all of the stores start stocking Halloween supplies in like February.
Yeah, there you go. I was gonna say June, but you
Damn.
pushed it way back.
No, I'm gonna start celebrating Halloween January 1st. It's like immediately.
right after Valentine's Day. Bam. You want?
I wake up. No, I wake up January 1st, hungover as shit from the party last night, and I'm just like, all right, and I just like slowly, awkwardly climb into my like sexy Dr. Zoidberg costume or whatever.
Time to get spooky for the new year.
I like the idea that it's like this is where the immediate firm transition into like 2021 happens right after Halloween.
Like I'm just imagining, like, you know, the main character from Disco Elysium, like that guy just kind of like getting into like a cheerleader costume, like slowly, awkwardly groaning because of the hangover.
I just googled it, by the way. There is a sexy Zoidberg costume.
Yes,
That's good. I love and hate. Oh Jesus, that's horrible. I hate that. That's some Delta Green shit right there.
Oh God.
Oh,
and the supporting
is-
cast. It
Wow,
looks like
all of
she's
this
wearing
is
a
horrible.
sleep. It looks like Leela's wearing a sleep mask because it's
Yeah,
supposed to be an
that's-
eye.
I love the eye holes in her eye. It's horrible. All of this is terrible.
I don't know how I hate those eye. I hate her eye. How can an eye guy be so bad?
I know.
Oh man, everyone that's listening to this is missing out. Maybe we can put it as an image in the YouTube video.
we can
Maybe.
probably do that.
It'd be probably pretty easy. It'll require some movie magic, as the kids say, and I think I can do that.
Put up some of that beautiful movie magic. Yeah.
After what I did with
You think you could
Audacity
show
on my
off
first
sexy
time.
Zoidberg to the world?
I don't want to put this person on blast. Like, this is actually really based. It's just also really horrifying.
It's some Delta Green shit. That's a monster that you fight.
You're gonna do that on just classic RPG combat.
It does have a
going?
little bit of like that Demonette and 40K vibes.
Oh, wait a
Giant
minute.
enemy spider.
I don't know if this is... Is it? I don't know if this is Zoidberg or if this costume is the devil from the Powerpuff Girls.
Oh, that's him.
Oh, that's
That's him.
the name. Him. Okay.
Ooh, I like those claws. I like those big meaty claws.
Him was my favorite character in that show.
I can
Him
accept
is
that.
wonderful.
Oh no.
I liked how he had his own background music all the time.
Is this actual lore where Zoidberg has
No, it's
children
not
with a
real
human
lore.
woman?
Zoidberg gets eternally cucked.
Oh, okay.
His entire species dies in a mating ritual because they're crabs.
Oh
So
no.
so he's the last one like left alive because all of the rest of them got their dick wet.
Every single one of them died and foamed at the mouth and exploded.
Oh no.
I remember that episode being really odd.
It was very strange.
I don't
But-
remember it. Well, I kind of remember it.
He just goes. It's
What
a
a
really
great show.
Futurama will never be replaced by anything else ever again.
I liked Futurama better before it got canceled.
Yeah, Futurama after it was canceled sucks.
Some of the movies were okay, but like the rest of it was just like, this is not. The last episode of the series was good.
Yeah, that one was, I don't know, maybe it's because it was really heartfelt. That
Yeah,
one was
the
really
post
good.
cancellation.
Anyway, we should talk about something way less fun. Delta Green.
Let's talk about Delta Green.
Wow. I'm gonna have to get a soundboard and put an alarm that's like wee woo, hot takes incoming.
It's funny because we all really like Delta Green.
No, I love Delta Green. It's just not fun. It's not a fun thing to think about. It's like it's very dark and dreary.
I try to make my Delta Green experience really fun.
It's supposed to be dark and dreary. If it's too fun, then you kind of lose the point.
I've always found it kind of strange that like you would want to play a game like this where like you get all your friends together and you get like popcorn and stuff and you're like, all right, everyone, let's get depressed together. Let's just have a horrible time tonight.
No, it's like it's fun to have horrible things happen sometimes.
Hey, come on. Hey, you want to come hang out and have existential depression with me tonight?
Yeah, exactly. No, I enjoy that a lot. That's why I love Delta Green.
I get really excited about. I honestly get really excited about the concept of Delta Green.
I feel like this would be a really great computer game.
It probably
Like with like
would.
somber music playing in the background and like really gritty voice actors just going on about how
Soundtrack to DEF CON.
yeah. Ooh, yeah. Ooh, honestly, here's my hot take. We should do DEF CON as one of our Halloween episodes.
Oh,
DEF CON's a video game. I don't know if that really fits.
Well, that's true.
we can like lightly talk about DEF CON.
We're definitely going to be talking about DEF CON.
I mean, we're doing it right now.
We probably have a better reason to talk about DEF CON next week when we do Red Markets, because spoilers, there's some DEF CON type shit that happens in that one.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to that because DEF CON's one of my favorite games. I always lost.
Everyone loses. It's kind of the point of the game.
That's the joke.
Oh! Whoops.
Oh man. But I see a note here that says the years between 1968 and 2001 are known as the cowboy years.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Okay, so we should start with what Delta Green really is, right? In 1928, the FBI raided a town in Massachusetts called Innsmouth. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was discovered that the local population had been somehow corrupted by some otherworldly force. And what they found there was so horrific that not only was it immediately classified, a new agency was created called Delta Green, a secret one. And their assignment was to ensure that nothing like that would ever happen on American soil ever again. Throughout the 40s and 50s, Delta Green is basically doing some pulp shit fighting Nazi super science in the form of a group called the Karateka. And they're like evil, the most evil and disgusting like Nazi SS bullshit you can think of, only they actually do have access to like magic and like Cthulhu shit, right?
Instead of just thinking they have access to magic and Cthulhu shit.
Yes, instead of just thinking that they do, they actually do have it. And Delta Green and the British equivalent of Delta Green, I forget what they're called, cooperating together prevent the Karateka from succeeding, right?
I don't know how I
spoilers,
feel.
Nazi Germany has nothing going for it, and it falls apart, and it gets conquered.
What?
I don't
You
know
didn't
how I
win?
feel about us cooperating with the British, though. Like, can we really trust those redcoats?
No, we can't.
Exactly.
Don't find it possible to deal with the Brits.
Like, I don't know. I feel like as soon as they'd get something spooky, they'd try to give it to the queen to give her eternal life, and then she'd like try to take over the world. I feel like they're just
No,
a
the queen
ticking
is
time
already
bomb.
eternal. She's a fucking lizard person.
Yeah,
Is
she's a
this in
reptilian.
the lore book? Is this in the
No.
GM book that you
This is
didn't?
in
No.
real life.
This is in real
Jeez.
life.
Oh, you're right. Excuse me. Of course. All hail the lizard queen.
All hail the Lizard Queen.
May her tail regrow eternal.
That's perfect. I love that.
May her serpentine patron will devour the world, but not today.
Anyways, all right. So we have Delta Green fighting the Nazis, right?
Mhm,
They're
mhm.
doing this up and until the 50s. After the 50s, the Cartecchia kind of drops off the map. It's still out there somewhere, but they're not as big of a threat as they used to be.
Mm.
Did you say Latin America?
No, I didn't say anything about Latin America. Is there something on the wind? Something we're hearing on the wind that's telling us some lies?
You
The
hear that?
50s would be all about the Soviets, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Ooh.
And that leads to the next big event. Fast forward to the 60s. Delta Green is pretty established. They have kind of prestige within the secret part of the government. Insofar as like any sort of like secret agency can have prestige, right?
Yeah, of course, of course.
They've had nothing but success. It's been a golden age for Delta Green, right?
Mm.
Now, something big is going down in Southeast Asia, where the U.S. is currently fighting the Vietnam War, right?
Yes.
So they used the Vietnam War as an excuse to smuggle over like a massive amount of like Delta Green agents and money and materials. And they staged this huge operation somewhere in the jungles of Laos, right? Anyway, it's like a total disaster, and like not very many Delta Green agents make it out, and all that money gets wasted, and like something escapes. And Delta Green is basically disbanded by presidential order on the spot.
Y'all fucked up.
Yes. And the years between 1968 and 2001 are known as the cowboy years. Delta Green becomes like an illegal conspiracy within the government rather than a specific like actual like legal branch of the government, right?
Mhm,
Well, yeah, it
mhm.
becomes like a secret society.
Yes. After 2001, like basically the next day after 9/11, Bush reinstates Delta Green and reforms it as the group. And it creates a rivalry between the new agents of the group and the old agents that are the outlaws that have been on the run since 1968.
Okay, so no, hold up. I would be angry too if I was called the group. If like
No,
my
they're called Delta Green. They're just referred to as the group.
Oh, okay, so that's not the official name. Okay, I understand now. I'm sitting there as soon as I heard the phrase the group, right? I started losing my shit because it's the biggest downgrade I've ever heard.
It's
They're
like one of
still-
those bad sci-fi movies where everything's just like a noun, like the Empire, the contingency, the X, and it's just the group.
I feel like the contingency would have been cooler.
Yeah,
Well, okay,
you know what? That's
throughout its
actually pretty
history-
based.
Throughout its history, like the various secret branches of the U.S. government have had like informal names that refer to them obliquely. Like the CIA is known as the company, right? Delta Green was referred to as like I don't remember what it was before 1960, but after that it was called the group.
The group.
Prior to 2001, it was called the conspiracy or something like that.
I like
If I
that.
remember correctly, like the DHS is usually just operated and you refer to work in the offices, like when they are doing really secretive stuff.
Yeah, I like that there's no official hierarchy in Delta Green. So it kind of feels like the agency is just self-perpetuating because the only real operatives are like the agents and what they can scrounge together. And if they just happen to find another operative who works in a position high enough that they can like pull strings to help them get out of jail or escape prosecution. But it just kind of feels like Delta Green is I don't know, almost anarchist in how its hierarchy works, because it's just agents, and agents work together and give each other missions.
It's big and amorphous. There's supposedly a leadership in a cell. All right, so like there's various different kinds of cells, right? Basically there's either cells, which are like permanent, like long-term, like cells of Delta Green, right?
Yeah.
And then there's working groups, which are like task groups in the rest of the government, right? Or
Of
they're
course.
temporary, amorphous sort of like things that are attached to some other cell that they go out and do a mission and then they stop once the mission is done, right? So you have a cell, which is like the leadership, the nominal leadership of Delta Green, but nobody knows like who a cell is. Nobody's ever seen a cell. Nobody knows what the membership of a cell is like. Nobody knows where a cell is located, and it's kind of implied that a cell doesn't really exist. That it's just kind of like it's if you've been in Delta Green long enough, you can use the protocol of a cell in order to contact other cells to tell them what to do.
Yeah, Delta Green's just kind of like a self-perpetuating organism. It doesn't have the same kind of hierarchy and
It's like
other
cancer
secret.
within the government. Like
Yeah,
it
does.
can just reproduce anywhere inside of it.
Yeah, and it doesn't have the same, like in a lot of other horror settings, usually the secret government conspiracy is very hierarchical. Like the SCP Foundation has its O5 council, who are very assuredly in charge, and there's always just kind of a leadership role. But here, Delta Green is really interesting, and just how they just kind of do whatever they want. They do, they do praxis. This is what.
In many ways, I think it's probably due to Delta Green's rooting in more real-world conspiracies and documentable things, in that these agencies often literally exist based upon old orders that have been passed down by people who have not really been spoken to, who are kind of passed along, and they engage in some long plan to such a degree that nobody really knows or understands how it came about, where it came from, or what the actual purpose of it is.
Yeah, it's kind of like as if there were still Soviet agents that were in 2020 being activated across the U.S.
It's almost as if like they have some sort of like collective interest with each other that allows them to cooperate in a way that exists outside of like the standard framework of society, right?
I wish there was a word for that.
Yeah, it's really weird that there isn't. It's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't know,
anyway,
I think that's nonsense there. I'm pretty sure there's no word for that kind of thing.
so
The
anyway,
deep state, that's all.
That is some deep state stuff. You'll never
so
know.
It's almost
back
like they've
to
developed some sort of consciousness that allows them to like understand their position or like class, if you will, within like society, and allows them to like recognize their friends and cooperate with each other.
So back to our comrades in Delta Green and their propagation of class warfare against
Yeah.
the Lovecraftian bourgeois.
The players are agents of the government. That's the default campaign. You literally play the pigs.
Nice.
This is a horror game, and half the horror comes from what the government asks you to do. It's a coin with a mundane horror on one side and a cosmic horror on the other. Like, on one hand, you're like, half the horror in all of this comes from, like, the government is letting me do this. Even if I'll face, like, consequences for it, the government has deemed it necessary enough that I do this, that, like, I'm technically part of the government right now. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pushing back a little bit on that earlier, because if you do crazy stuff, there is mechanically official reviews, and
That's
you have
true.
to
Yeah,
like.
but official reviews aren't like the stuff that you need to worry about. It's the stuff you're actually doing that's terrible.
Yeah,
like
that's
even
true.
if you get fired or like put in jail or something, like that doesn't unkill all those orphans.
That
And you're still working for Delta Green. Like, even if you become a homeless bum and like everyone in your life leaves you, like you're still an agent and have to do the mission.
Yes.
And the ramifications for all that are actually done in depth. Like, I got caught up on one part of the guidebook where it's like, and then you need to spend time with your character's home life and just detail it falling apart and how your bond falling with your ex-wife is leading you closer to a divorce. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Hey, Craig, let's RP your failing marriage real quick.
Hey, can we get a little bit
Hey,
of
I don't
dialogue
need to
about
roleplay that one.
that? Hey, as your GM, I'd really appreciate it if you'd go ahead and give me a little bit of dialogue between you and your son who's disowned you. That's tough.
So, Nancy, let's RP your son running away because you've neglected him. Just real quick. Between our depressing missions, just to lighten the mood.
Just to lighten the mood, your dad got cancer. Let's play through that a little bit.
Hey, can you shake? Let's really shake.
Your daughter's birthday was set during the last mission, and you missed it. And you get home, and she's just like standing at the door with her dinner plate eyes, like, "Why didn't you show up at my birthday?"
Your daughter has been sitting at the table for 2 days straight with
a birthday cake and like the candles burned down to nothing.
Deflated birthday cake. Yeah, exactly.
Daddy, why didn't you come to my party? And like, this is the downtime.
Yeah, this is lighthearted stuff between missions.
Yeah, that's the worst thing about the downtime is like your downtime options are spend time with one of your friends.
You can do some like positive shit there.
You can
spend time with your friends. That's about it. You can strengthen a bond. Every other option is like, well, you can do something, but this also weakens your like emotional bonds because you're like training or studying, and you get too into it because your life sucks and you're traumatized.
Yeah, and there's like official mechanics for going into therapy, and like there's the game mechanically tells you what to do if you lie to your therapist about like why you're so messed up, and it's because you're fighting crazy monsters.
You just tell them I'm fighting crazy monsters and they're in the hospital.
But then the game explicitly points out that like your wife isn't going to appreciate you spending all your time in therapy.
Why?
And it hurts your bond with your wife.
What a fucking bitch. She's incredibly mean. Like I can't believe that you have trouble without me. Like I get being concerned, but that's not like a healthy relationship.
And then it's like your therapy isn't even helping because you can't tell the therapist that it was crazy cultists that you killed. That's the reason why you're so messed up. So you have like a negative X percentage to the therapy success.
We think
So it's like not only is therapy not working, but like your wife is starting to hate you because you become an alcoholic.
Hey Doc, I'm really going through some stuff. Yeah, just give it to me straight. I'll, in this office, it's full confidence. Yeah, well, we really think that Hitler has been reincarnated as a small hermit crab, and everyone's trying to worship him. We can't let this happen anymore.
And then you get put on antipsychotic meds, and then it's like, yeah, these won't help either because it's the wrong stuff. And I'm just like, oh my god.
What if you take the antipsychotic meds and what if you take the antipsychotic meds and like Delta Green stops existing? You're like, oh my god.
Whoops.
Whoops. Turns out I was just crazy.
That's what we call a sanity loss. What if your sanity loss was actually not losing sanity?
What if you gained sanity?
Well, it's actually arguably beneficial to get so messed up that you become a psychopath because psychopaths no longer have to worry about sanity loss. And it's like you're fine. So like if you want to min-max the game, you can just play as a psychopath.
You can also become like hardened towards certain types of trauma. Like if there's only so many times that blood and guts will cause you to lose sanity. Like you can become hardened to it and not like it won't affect you as much.
Yes, although getting hardened to violence makes you less of a person.
Yeah, it makes everybody else weirded out by you. So it can damage your ability to interact with other people, but it makes you more easily able to deal with.
I really enjoyed. I super enjoyed the dumb character that I put together was he had a lot of power, and so like anything like he of all the like the 4 or 5 things that happened that tested his sanity, like only one of them got to him. Like he walked into a bathroom full of like there's a dead body,
human.
jellified human. Someone's got like a jellified human, and the only thing he did was basically just go, "Oh," and put down his can of spam.
Oh my god, you played a
I think the
himbo.
part-
I'm too. Like,
I think the part that actually like made you lose any sanity was the fact that like the dog was left in the house and wasn't fed for a couple of days.
yeah, that's where you
Oh
lost
my
your sanity from.
god,
He
you
was
play,
really
you literally
upset.
played a himbo.
No, you think it.
puppy.
The puppy. You'd think it that you don't. You think I would have played a himbo, but what he really was a hardened DEA agent whose favorite horror flick was Reefer Madness.
Yeah, he was a
Oh,
psycho.
okay.
He was a pure like down to the core psycho.
I'm hardened to all of these cosmic horrors. Oh no, a little puppy.
Little Popo.
Yeah, this feels like one of those games
And then you
where
sent your psionic warrior to imprison it within the earth.
No! Oh God! No! Not like that.
it seems like this is one of those games where playing to win kind of takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can play it to win, but it's like, why would you do that when you could just like kind of the point of the game is like the downward spiral.
It really
Yeah,
is.
Downward spiral.
you get together and you have a fun time acting out a downward spiral into PTSD, depression, psychosis, failing relationships, and then like you leave the game night with your friends feeling, I don't know, hollowed out inside, and you're like, yeah, there we go, guys. Successful Saturday.
You deal with the like psychosis and the downward spiral and the destruction of all your relationships and just like this horrible like nightmare. And then you go and you play the game on Saturday and you play a game called Delta Green about
2020 mood.
Anyways.
Well, you gotta escape from your terrible conspiracies, you know? Old children are always in Central Park, as we all know. We've got, we've got pizza parlors with pedophile cannibals.
That's not real,
obviously,
Madrona.
This is
Come on, only Epstein Island is real.
Obviously, this is... Okay.
Anyway, we should probably start talking about the actual game again. Oh, I mean, obviously we were, but...
Why?
Anyways...
Sanity lost right now.
Basically, you do need to avoid making yourself obvious as a Delta Green agent. Like, you can't be mentioning, like, mythos-related shit to people that don't desperately need to hear it. And you can't go around, like, obviously flouting, like, the limits of your organization's power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, there's actually one thing about Delta Green's, like, specific setting during the War on Terror very useful, right? Once the DHS came to be, Patriot Act and all that other fun shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
The legal framework was put in place for joint task forces, which is basically any amount of agents from any of the various branches can cooperate on any task at any time without oversight, which makes all of this possible, basically. Which means you don't have to go dark, like disappear from your office one day. You can be like, oh, I'm going out to like Ohio to work on a thing with with a task force out there, and everyone's just gonna be like, oh, okay. Like your group can exist in a legitimate way, and you can still go out there and do illegal shit, right?
Yeah, of course. Which is comforting in a way.
No, it's because that exists in real life, and that's not comforting at all.
Yeah, you wave your badge around and get stuff done, but you can't kind of wave around Delta Green's badge. You have to like wave around your DHS badge.
Yeah.
Also, just that happens in real life is not comforting.
Yes.
It's Mondo bad, even.
Mondo bad. We should talk a little bit about history.
Mm-hmm.
Right? In 2001, 9/11 happened. That was really bad.
Mm-hmm.
That probably wasn't a
Um,
good thing, yeah.
9/11 kicked the beehive of U.S. jingoistic sentiment, and 2 years later, we formed an executive department called the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS. That was also really, really bad. The DHS is a very nebulous and poorly defined mission statement, which is basically make America safe?
With big fat question marks.
And 14 question marks. And it's made up of a bunch of different agencies culled from other departments, or ones that are just made up on the spot, like ICE. Critically, a lot of these agencies suddenly had armed wings where normally they were just like purely administrative positions, right?
Mhm.
Like customs and the Secret Service and all those used to be Treasury agents, right?
Yeah, because it was specifically for customs.
Yeah, because it was all like economic, administrative type shit. The Secret Service was the only armed branch, and even then, they weren't like expected to do any like fighting, right?
Yeah.
Now all of them have armed branches, and they're all expected to be ready to fight.
Yeah, even the EPA, it's weird.
Yes,
That's also weird because we don't. They haven't done anything.
Your factory's polluting, and he just shoots a
Bang,
bazooka
bang, bang,
at it.
Bang 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 bang.
He just cuffs one of the like pipes at the factory.
arrest
you
the
gotta
whole
stop
factory.
making this sound good.
Cuff-
Put the
himself
put
right
the
to the
factory
factory.
in Supermax.
Finally.
Stop talking this up. Like, I mean, armed EPA does sound better
Armed
than
E-
most other departments.
Armed EPA sounds fucking cool as hell.
they just start
Anyways.
like shooting the smog, just gunning down the
Just like
forest
shooting
fires.
up into the sky.
They're just like trying to mow down the forest fires from like their warthogs.
Oh, so they have Halo technology too.
Yeah, it's the only warthog.
The fucking EPA Spartans like drop in from a spaceship.
From a giant green powered ship comes the ODST.
They call in like cruise missile strikes on people that litter.
Unironically do that. Fuck littering.
It's so frustrating.
No one will ever litter again.
It takes like 30 seconds. Like you literally just like you crumple up the fucking like wrapper and you put it in the cup holder and then you like throw it in the garbage can wherever you're going.
Or do it what literally every other human being on the planet
Have a little
does.
garbage bag in your car.
No, I was saying just use your passenger seat as a garbage bag.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I killed Marlon. I'm sorry.
Marlon's back.
Dead.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Hello,
Anyway,
happy to be back.
The DHS handles stuff like Customs, Secret Service, the Coast Guard now, and they were all part of different departments originally. And there is significant friction within DHS because of this, which means that nobody is really in charge of it. Because like directives from on high have to make it through like a minefield of like warring subordinates in order to get where they need to go. So like there's a lot of situations where like just like one department will just not communicate very well with another and it'll just like you just don't get that information. So the DHS is just a black box, so they put in a bunch of odds and ends. It's the junk drawer that everyone has in their kitchen. Except it's full of guns and they shoot people and kidnap people.
And have like black sites.
Yes, and they have black sites too. And
it's America's safe.
Basically every member of DHS, all their agencies used to be like regulatory administrative positions. Now they're all like aggressive armed enforcement without oversight. And of course, all of this was created in the environment of paranoia and xenophobia, which the U.S. is still strapped within, although to a much lesser degree than it was during 2003.
Yep, it got bad. It got incredibly bad down there. So.
And at the same time as all that was happening, the stage is being set for the 2008 financial crash as the Republican government was stripping out financial regulations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like this sort of like build up to apocalypse between 2001 and 2008, right?
I think you're really putting a lot of politics into this apolitical game, honestly.
You're right. I'm sorry. Anyway, the vibe of Delta Green is supposed to be this sort of like wolves protecting sheep thing, where it's like you experience all of this horror so that regular innocent people don't have to. But it's like, on the other hand, like, it's obviously like bad that you're doing this because it's all illegal, even by the rules of the people that are like hiring you to do it. So it's just like, really, you're just like a fucking like pawn, and you're destroying yourself and committing terrible atrocities on like innocent people, and it might not be for anything at all. Like, it might be for nothing. It's almost like no, you know what? If only there was some sort of like real life equivalent of this situation.
Yes, of course. That would be. It would be.
If only there was some sort of like country that existed in the world that, like, maybe in the early 2000s or something, the United States like invaded and just destroyed, like flattened, you know? Maybe even one that we invaded prior to that too.
Yeah, for the really for the shits and giggles of it. Yeah.
Just for the
Like
shits
in
and
East
giggles
Asia?
of it. Like in Western Asia. Like
in Western
kind
Asia.
of pretty close to like Europe, but not so close to Europe that the Russians care about it.
Oh, like directly under the former Soviet Union?
Yeah, like maybe somewhere near Iran, in that general like region.
Yeah, that would make
Like,
sense.
maybe if there was like a country there, like we invaded it, that might be a good comparison to like what you're doing in Delta Green.
This
like
is really a
committing-
big stretch.
Yeah, it's too big of a stretch, I think. But
Let's
just run with it.
At all. Not believable. You've pulled me out of it.
Yeah, but let's just run with it and continue on from here.
That's fair. I'll take it.
Basically, you're committing these terrible atrocities, and it's basically for nothing, even though like the people above you are telling you that it's very important. Like, even like if you are ultimately doing something good, like, is it really worth what you're doing?
Is it worth it?
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
And that's the real horror. That's the real horror of this game. Is like, is what you're receiving from this, like, is the good that you're doing worth what you're doing? You know.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty spooky.
Yeah, no.
Is it even
Makes
worth
sense.
It isn't.
And that's how we're ending this Delta Green game, guys. Good job. Now we can all end our party. I had such fun. And then everyone,
This is a campaign.
good Friday night.
I adore this game because it explores a time and a place that I grew up in, but I didn't really understand at the time. And it also incorporates like a sort of cosmic horror that I enjoy, independent of like the political horror that I experienced in real life.
Every day, every single day.
Yeah.
I agree. I haven't played it yet, but just reading what you've sent me and looking at more information on this game, that combination of just political horror and cosmic horror really comes together really well in a way that is kind of unique to our era. Like old, even in its settings about the 50s, even like during the height of the Cold War and like the Red Scare, I don't think it has the same energy as just a modern political horror does, and combining it with Lovecraftian is just mwah, chef's kiss.
Because like
it's kind of like the only way we can make sense of our terrible world.
I think it's like the reason for it is that we lived through it, so it's more real to us than the 50s were.
Yeah, of course.
Probably.
I also think that the 50s, like the threat was actually overblown in the 50s. But there wasn't enough like instability inherent in like our conception of reality for it to really sink in that the threat was real. We were still like buoyed by like this sensation that we were unstoppable and the best country in the world. But I think that mask started to crack in the 90s, and then like after like the end of history, like the fall of the Soviet Union, 2001, like 9/11 happened, and that was like from 1991 to 2001, we had like this like golden age. Like nothing bad would ever happen again. Everything would just get slightly better off into eternity. It was the end of history. Everything was just going to get better and better until the end.
Yeah.
And then 2001 just sort of like all those built up contradictions from like hundreds and hundreds of years, ever since like the 70s when we had fucking the first and last big economic crash. We had austerity in the 70s, and you know, it just all hit us at once in 2001. It's something snapped inside, and we all went crazy
In the game.
in the game.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is the whole era is filled with anxiety because, like, you go ahead and look back to the late '90s, especially, and you see this growing terror inside of people. Like, there's a perspective that the '90s was overly peaceful for people, but it was kind of like America, especially, had this existential dread going on. It becomes really visible in pop culture. Like, nobody knows who the hell anything is, what anything's about.
Well, in the 50s, we didn't really have any anxiety. In the 90s, we had lots of
Yeah.
anxiety, and then all that anxiety came to a head, and we developed fascism accidentally. Whoops! Did I
Wait,
just put
are you
politics? Did I
saying-
just put politics in
Oh,
this? I'm
no.
sorry, I didn't mean to bring politics.
Oh
into this.
no!
This has been apolitical up until now. Now you're just shoving politics into this game once again.
You're right. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
Gotta stop that. This is a fun game for kids.
Anyways, final thoughts from everybody, I suppose.
I think everyone should play a Delta Green game at one point in time. Delta Green is fantastic. It's fantastic. It's I don't want to say beginner friendly, but definitely friendly enough, right? And I don't think GMs have to worry a whole lot with the mechanics of it. They can focus on the story, and that always is a huge boon to me. And that's it. That's my final statement about that.
I think that I'm looking forward to playing the game because just from the lore and the mechanics seem a little confusing, but I'm sure once I started actually like holding the dice in my hand and rolling the dice, it would feel a lot more intuitive. But the lore is, as the kids say, let me just find it in here. Pog and red pilled.
What does that mean?
It's something that the kids are saying on Fall Guys.
Oh, I see. All right, get off my lawn.
Honestly, as far as Delta Green goes, I think it's one of the more. I think it's probably the most accurate, modern. Like, one of the problems with Lovecraftian RPGs in general is Lovecraft isn't actually about scary monsters. It never was. Like, that whole mythos isn't. And setting it in the 20s is more like, let me roleplay a horror that I don't understand because this is about the fun revolvers and the grizzled detectives. Delta Green does a very good job of moving Lovecraft to a setting that's contemporary and bringing the actual horror elements of the setting in. Because you can't really get that existential man is so small terror when you're dealing with something that's a fantasy realm to you.
Mm.
Bringing it to a land of Epstein brain, worms in your brain, Epstein's in your brain, your various pills inside of you.
Epstein killed my brain.
Epstein killed my brain.
I've been dead for years.
Dong Dong never died.
No,
Dong never died.
Without that, I don't think you can actually do existential horror.
I get you.
Yeah, if you
Yeah,
can't relate
I
to
agree.
it, it's not scary.
The last bit of the podcast there before we did this final thoughts was kind of my final thoughts. I basically I love this game. I think that it's like it just stumbled dick first into like the most like perfect combination of cosmic and political horror. And it's like it's perfect in a way that I don't know if I can like write for it, because it's like I want desperately to run this game, but it's like I feel like nothing I do will ever do it justice. I do think that any game of Delta Green that you run has to have like a Blue Oyster Cult album playing in the background at all times.
Yeah, I can feel that.
I think this may just be you.
I think that's just me, but that's how I would want it.
I mean, if you're at the jam, you can do whatever you want, really.
I play Sisters of Mercy.
If I could, I would fade out on Don't Fear the Reaper, but I can't because of copyright. So
I also
instead,
don't know how to do that in Audacity yet.
that's fine.
So instead, we'll fade out on Tarzan Boy inside of our heads.
Let's take a moment to think about it. Okay, I did it. Nice.
I did it too.
So
Okay,
all of our listeners, just please imagine the song in your head and then just have it fade out in your head.
Yes. As far as like pros and cons of the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Basic role playing, it's not hard to pick up. It's different from a lot of other systems that are out there. But as far as like D100 systems, it's probably the easiest D100 system to get into. Like Call of Cthulhu is dead easy. I mean, it's not easy to play, but it's like the mechanics are easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're dirt simple.
It's hard for the GM to fuck up, like mechanically. Like it's hard to create an unbalanced encounter, or whatever. Like as long as the players are having fun, Delta Green operates perfectly fine. Your chances of success stay pretty low. Like a peak like professional is going to get like a 70% chance to complete anything, which is okay for the attitude of the game, but I can see where it would be frustrating for people to be like, I'm like a doctor, I should just be able to do this, and it's like 70%. I rolled 80. Fuck, I lost.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You can mess it up, but like that's just how it is, ain't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, like even doctors can make mistakes.
I think-
As far as like adventure design, I was discussing this with a friend the other day, and I came to the conclusion that like a cosmic horror or any kind of like horror scenario or investigative scenario, right? It should be on rails, but it should be that the rails are leading you to failure, and the way you succeed is by forcing yourself off the rails and doing something unexpected. Because if you just let this scenario play itself out, the bad guy's gonna win. Otherwise, it wouldn't make much sense for you to be investigating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Because if the bad guy was gonna get caught anyway, then why are you here?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the point of you? What's your great skills for? Who cares?
So
Yeah,
basically, you should be on the path to failure, and then you have to work it onto like a path to victory.
That's I think that makes perfect sense, really, and it's a better way to do it too.
All right. Anybody have anything else to say before we move on?
I think we're all set.
I think we're all set.
I'm set at least.
Okay. Now
Well-
we're gonna talk about our personal projects and stuff. Who wants to go first?
I'm gonna buy a desk in a few days and then put that together. That's all I've got going on.
Ooh,
That sounds awesome.
Thank you.
very well done.
Thank you.
If no one else is going, I'm I think within the next month, I'm going to release I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit more testing on it, and I may release a first draft for public use of a homebrew system, Titanic. Depending on how it goes, it should be nice.
Ooh.
I'm still offhandedly working on a furry trash hack of RP.
Nice. I like it. Big fan.
I'm still just working on my personal thing, working title Aeon, and I've made a little bit of progress.
Hmm.
It's about piloting a giant cyborg and going insane, a little bit like Delta Green, except you're not piloting a cyborg at all with Delta Green.
Yep, it's kind of like that. It's more existential dread.
Okay. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. Happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.